The summer sun bore down relentlessly on the valley, its rays turning the earth into a mosaic of parched cracks, resembling shattered pottery strewn across the ground. For 18 long months, a merciless drought had gripped the ranching community, squeezing life from the land that had nurtured families for generations. Wells that had once flowed freely were now empty, offering only dust and disappointment in their stead. Memories of bubbling creeks from days gone by lingered only in the minds of those who remembered. Now they existed as mere impressions etched in dry mud. A grim reality unfolded through disheartening statistics. 3 ranches succumbed to foreclosure. The Cooperville place sprawled over 800 acres and had been tended by the same family since 1892. It now stood vacant, its for sale sign fading under the harsh sunlight. Jack Whitfield faced devastation after selling half his cattle at an enormous loss due to the soaring costs of water transport. Meanwhile, the Martinez family dwindled to their last $50 in savings as they weighed whether to purchase feed or finance another costly water delivery. Each morning brought with it a desperate scan of the horizon for rain clouds that never appeared, while every evening turned into a calculation of how many more days they could endure. The feed store had shuttered its doors, and even the local diner reduced its hours. Enrollment at the elementary school shrank by 15 students compared to last year. Families packed up and left in search of jobs where water still flowed freely from taps without fear of running dry. This wasn't merely a drought, it was a slow-motion catastrophe dismantling a way of life, one dried-up well at a time. People who had weathered floods, fires, recessions, and personal tragedies were finally reaching their breaking point. Frustration visible on their faces during church services or town meetings where officials offered little more than sympathy instead of hope. The valley longed for miracles, but those too seemed scarcer than precious water. Yet amidst this atmosphere thick with desperation, monthly livestock auctions trudged on, a testament to resilience, though attendance was significantly reduced. Most ranchers couldn't afford purchases anymore. Those selling were driven solely by necessity rather than choice. The auction barn hung heavy with hay scent mixed with palpable desperation as motes danced in shafts of afternoon light, cutting through dusty rafters, while restless patrons shuffled about impatiently in their seats. They'd arrived expecting prize-winning quarter horses or expertly trained cutting horses adorned with documented bloodlines and championship ribbons. But what awaited them instead was lot number 47. With an unceremonious swing open of the gate, a dappled gray gelding stumbled into view, his ribs stark against his dull coat, as his head hung low enough that his muzzle nearly grazed the sawdust floor beneath him. The dappled gray gelding shuffled into the ring, each hesitant step drawing a heavy silence across the auction barn. A hush fell over the crowd as they took in his gaunt frame, ribs jutting out starkly against his dull coat. The flickering afternoon light filtered through dust motes, illuminating the unease etched on the faces of those watching. He moved with an eerie grace, almost ghost-like, as if he had forgotten what it meant to be grounded. "This one's seen better days," the auctioneer announced, attempting to infuse some cheer into his voice that felt painfully strained. "But he's got years left in him and good bone structure. A project horse for the right buyer." With a forced enthusiasm that barely echoed off the walls, he called out to the assembled ranchers, "Let's start at $500. A tense silence swallowed his words. Disbelief hung thick in the air, like humidity before a storm. The auctioneer cleared his throat and lowered his offer, desperation creeping into his tone as he said, "$400? Still no movement from the crowd. Then came a cruel laugh from somewhere in the back, a sound sharp enough to cut through their collective hopelessness. "You'd have to pay me to take that bag of bones," someone shouted, eliciting chuckles from others who agreed with this harsh sentiment. In stark contrast stood the horse, still and quiet, his glazed eyes reflecting years of neglect and abandonment. He was all too aware that hope was often more painful than despair itself. "Come on now! Someone give this old boy a chance!" The auctioneer's voice cracked under pressure as he attempted again to rally interest, but only crickets seemed to respond. Pity replaced professionalism in his expression when no one stepped forward. It was then Brian Burns rose from where he sat, among those who could barely afford even cheap seats at these auctions. A man worn down by time but resolute nonetheless. His faded work jacket hinted at long hours spent laboring on parched land, while scuffed boots whispered tales of many miles walked upon drought-ridden pastures. "You serious, son?" questioned the auctioneer incredulously when Brian declared loud enough for all ears around him to catch wind of it. "Yes, sir. I'll pay 100. Murmurs surged through spectators like wildfire ignited by dry grass. Disbelief danced across weathered faces around him. An elder rancher nearby shook his head slowly, pity evident in every wrinkle lining his brow, as though addressing a foolish child caught up in daydreams rather than reality. "That's $100 down the drain," he muttered under breath while Brian remained undeterred, already striding toward payment without flinching under scrutiny or doubt thrown by others lingering in hesitation. Something about that forlorn horse tugged deep within him. The spirit shared between them spoke louder than mere appearances would suggest. It was recognition born out of kindred suffering, perhaps. Either way, he wasn't leaving without him. Brian approached the old trailer, his heart racing as he felt the weight of anticipation. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty ground, while he opened the trailer's back gate with a creaking groan. As he stepped inside, the scent of aged wood and metal filled his nostrils, a stark contrast to the heat that enveloped him outside. "Come on, River," he urged gently, glancing back at the gray gelding who remained by his side. The horse shifted uneasily, eyeing the darkened space with trepidation. Brian knew that this moment was pivotal. It wasn't just about loading a horse into a trailer. It was about giving River a second chance, just as Brian sought one for himself. "Easy now," Brian said softly, extending a hand towards River's muzzle. He took a slow step forward, coaxing him gently into the trailer's shadowy interior. Every inch felt like an eternity as River hesitated, snorting softly and shifting his weight from one hoof to another. The crowd buzzed around them, a mixture of disbelief and skepticism. Yet for Brian, there was only focus on that fragile connection between man and horse. "You can do this," he encouraged quietly. "It's okay." With a deep breath, River took a cautious step forward into the trailer's narrow confines. It was an unfamiliar world for him, one filled with echoes of uncertainty, but also whispers of hope. And Brian felt a twinge of sympathy as he watched River navigate his new surroundings. As they moved together further inside, Brian felt an electric charge in their shared silence, a promise unspoken, yet deeply understood. He reached out to scratch behind River's ear affectionately. Those small gestures seemed to fortify both their spirits against external doubts. When they finally reached the far end of the trailer, Brian carefully fastened the latch, securing River inside. "There you go," he murmured with relief, spilling from his voice as if releasing all tension from within him alongside each breath. "You're safe now." He stepped down from the trailer and closed its door gently behind him before taking one last look at River through an air vent. The horse stood still now, exuding a quiet resilience amidst circumstances that would have left many others crumbled. As he walked back toward his truck parked nearby under sprawling oak trees, casting flickering shadows across time-worn gravel roadways, leading away from Cooperville livestock auction grounds, like veins connecting lifeblood, running through struggling communities caught in drought's vice-like grip, He couldn't shake off feeling drawn closer towards everything this day symbolized. Redemption forged by determination amid despair. One heart finding solace mirrored perfectly within another soul, desperately seeking understanding. You ready for this? The sun hung low in the sky as Brian approached the ranch, casting long shadows across the parched earth. The familiar scent of hay and livestock wafted through the air, a bittersweet reminder of better days when the land thrived under a blue sky. Now, the ground beneath his boots was cracked and dry, each step echoing the struggle that had become part of daily life on the Burns Ranch. "Welcome home," Brian murmured softly as he opened the trailer door. He reached out to River, who stood within, his once dull coat beginning to gleam with a hint of vitality. The horse blinked slowly, taking in his new surroundings with cautious curiosity. Brian felt a surge of hope at that moment. Perhaps this creature could not only find water, but also rejuvenate something deep within him. With gentle hands, Brian guided River down from the trailer. "Easy, now," he encouraged, observing how River shifted tentatively onto solid ground for what felt like the first time in ages. The horse's nostrils flared as he took in every scent, the musty aroma of old wood mixed with fresh straw in the barn nearby. As they entered through a weathered wooden gate leading to an open pasture, River paused abruptly to survey his surroundings, a quiet field bordered by rustling trees and distant hills painted golden by the fading sunlight. The two shared a brief moment where silence stretched between them. It was palpable, yet comforting, an unspoken understanding passing from one to another. Brian led him towards a clean stall that had been prepared earlier that morning. "This will be your place for now," he said, while gesturing toward it warmly. River stepped cautiously inside, hesitating at first before sniffing around curiously. His ears twitched at every sound, the soft rustle of grass outside, mingled with faint chirps from crickets starting their evening song. Brian settled into watching him for a few moments longer before returning with water and feed. As he poured fresh water into a bucket and placed it before River, he couldn't help but notice how hunger drove away some remnants of fear. The gray gelding approached eagerly, drinking deeply, as if attempting to reclaim lost strength. "You've got some fight left in you after all," Brian remarked with an encouraging smile while brushing River's coat gently afterward. Each stroke brought back hints of color hidden beneath layers of neglect. Flecks of silver gray began to emerge like delicate secrets waiting to be unveiled. Days passed uneventfully at first, mornings filled with routine chores made familiar by years spent caring for horses on this ranch. Yet each dawn held renewed potential. Brian diligently worked alongside River while nurturing their bond day by day without pushing too hard or demanding too much. He observed closely how River reacted during grooming sessions. Learning about his preferences helped establish trust, a slow dance between human and horse unfolding naturally amidst mundane tasks often taken for granted. As the days rolled on, Brian felt a shift in the air. Each morning began with the soft coo of doves and the golden light spilling over the horizon, casting a warm glow across his small ranch. He found solace in his routine, feeding the other horses, mucking out stalls, and meticulously caring for River. The bond between them was slowly strengthening. He could see it reflected in River's eyes, which held a flicker of understanding. Brian approached River's stall early one morning, a brush in hand. The horse lifted his head as Brian entered, eyes brightening slightly at his presence. "Ready for some grooming today?" Brian spoke softly, letting his voice be calm and inviting as he stepped into the enclosed space. As he stroked River's coat, he noted how each gentle sweep brought forth more of that gleaming silver-gray hue hidden beneath layers of dust and neglect. He sensed something profound as their connection deepened, a silent communication developing through these simple acts of care. "You've got some fight left in you after all," Brian remarked with an encouraging smile while brushing away dried sweat and grime from River's neck. The rhythmic motion soothed both man and horse alike. A few days passed uneventfully at first. Mornings filled with familiar chores grounded Brian amidst uncertainty about the future of his ranch and that of every struggling neighbor nearby. Yet each dawn now held renewed potential, the kind born from hope mingling with determination. Every brushstroke was not just about cleaning, but rather about rebuilding trust, a slow dance evolving naturally within mundane tasks, often taken for granted. Brian focused on how River responded during their grooming sessions, flinching when brushed too hard or nudging him gently to indicate an itchy spot needing attention. He learned to read those subtle signs, recognizing that patience would pave the path forward as they grew closer together day by day. One bright afternoon brought them outside to explore further than before. Brian led River into an adjacent paddock where patches of dry grass stubbornly clung to life under relentless sunbeams, reflecting off parched earth like old memories refusing to fade away completely. "Let's see what you're made of," he murmured, as he stepped back to give River space while keeping a watchful eye on him. The horse stood alert, nostrils flaring slightly, while soaking up new surroundings with curiosity evident in every movement he made. The wind rustled through nearby trees, creating whispers that danced around them, as if nature itself supported this burgeoning partnership between human and equine. Encouraged by this sense of freedom shared between them, Brian took a few steps back before calling out confidently, "Come on, let's see how fast you can run." With that invitation hanging lightly in the air like sweet anticipation waiting for release, River seemed momentarily uncertain, but then broke into an easy trot, hooves drumming against cracked earth resonating like beats, matching heartbeats full of potential yet unknown. With a gentle breeze brushing against them, Brian kept his focus on River as he began to trot across the sunlit pasture. The air was alive with the scent of warm earth and fading grass, each breath filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. River's legs moved gracefully beneath him, but there remained an unspoken hesitance in his stride that hinted at the past they were both trying to overcome. "Come on, let's see how fast you can run," Brian called out with an encouraging cheer, excitement bubbling in his chest as he took a few steps back. He watched intently as River hesitated for just a moment, ears flicking back and forth as if weighing the invitation. But then, something ignited within him. Without warning, River broke into an easy trot that quickly transformed into a steady gallop. The sound of hooves thudding against the cracked ground harmonized with Brian's racing heart, the rhythm of their emerging partnership echoing through the stillness of the valley. Each powerful stride propelled River forward, dust swirling up around him like a cloud of dreams set free from burdens long carried. The horse seemed lighter somehow, shedding remnants of doubt with every bound over uneven terrain. Brian felt exhilaration washing over him, mingled with lingering concern. It was clear that trust would take time, a gradual unveiling rather than an instantaneous transformation. Even as River ran free and wild across the dry pasture, glimpses of fear still lingered behind those once dull eyes. It wouldn't be enough for Brian to push too hard or move too fast. He needed to let River come into himself at his own pace. As days unfolded before them like pages turning softly in a beloved book, each morning greeted Brian with renewed determination to nurture this fragile bond between man and horse. With patience woven into every interaction, he observed carefully how River reacted during their grooming sessions. His flinches under gentle brushes betrayed hidden scars that spoke volumes about trust shattered in another life. While brushing away layers of neglect from River's coat one afternoon, the bristles gliding through dusty patches, Brian marveled at how streaks of silver gray emerged like forgotten memories, rising from beneath shadows of despair. "Look at you," he murmured softly, as flecks of color began revealing themselves more vibrantly than before. "You're going to shine again." He paused periodically to speak soothing words, melodies laced with tenderness, as they established routines together, filling water buckets or leading River out for short walks around the barnyard, where dry tufts fought bravely against summer's relentless grip on their surroundings. Their shared moments became meditative rituals, a slow dance unfolding gently amidst work, often taken for granted by others who might not understand its significance. One warm afternoon, while sitting cross-legged on the ground next to his new companion after another grooming session filled with laughter and quiet whispers about dreams yet unrealized, Brian noticed a shift in River's demeanor. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty ground as Brian and River continued to grow closer. Each day brought new discoveries and deeper connections, but it was a crisp autumn morning when doubt began to seep into their world like an unwanted fog. A group of ranchers had gathered at the local diner, their voices rising above the clatter of dishes and low hum of conversation. The air was thick with skepticism as they discussed rumors surrounding Brian's miraculous horse. Whispers flitted between tables, filled with both curiosity and disbelief. "You really think that horse can find water?" Jack Whitfield's voice cut through the chatter, his brow furrowed in concern. He was a veteran rancher who had seen too much hardship in recent years to easily believe in miracles. "I mean, come on. It sounds more like a tall tale than reality." Brian sat at one corner table with a cup of coffee cooling beside him, his heart racing at Jack's words. The elder rancher's skepticism echoed the doubts brewing within Brian's own mind, a nagging feeling that maybe this was all just luck and coincidence. Across from him, Sarah Martinez stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, glancing sideways at Brian before speaking up. "I don't know, Jack. What if there's something to it? I saw River lead Brian right to water yesterday." Her voice carried a hint of hopefulness, but also uncertainty. After all, they were all living under the same oppressive drought. "Yeah? And what did that actually prove?" Jack countered sharply, leaning back against his chair as he crossed his arms defensively. "A few lucky digs doesn't make him some kind of miracle worker." The words stung more than Brian expected. They were reminiscent of what others had said about River when he first bought him. A broken-down horse no one wanted. Anger bubbled inside him as he listened to Jack dismiss something that felt so real, the bond he shared with River, how the horse seemed almost alive with purpose each time they found water together. "I know what I saw," Sarah insisted quietly but firmly. "Maybe we should give them a chance." Her support felt fleeting amid the tide of doubt washing over them, like trying to hold back waves crashing onto shore while standing barefoot in shifting sand. Just then, Michael Parsons entered the diner, a newcomer who'd moved into town seeking refuge from his own struggles back east. With wide eyes brimming with curiosity about everything ranch-related, he ambled over toward their group, despite sensing tension swirling around them like dry leaves caught in an autumn breeze. "Is it true about this horse?" Michael asked innocently enough while glancing toward Brian for confirmation or denial, the warmth from his smile contrasting sharply against the coldness emanating from some older ranchers seated nearby. "Well," Jack replied skeptically again, without hesitation or kindness to mask it, his tone harsh like gravel scraping along pavement. "Some folks will believe anything these days." Michael hesitated briefly before continuing cautiously. "But if he can find water?" The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barnyard as Brian knelt beside River. He ran his fingers through the horse's still dull coat, whispering encouragement. The air was thick with anticipation, a mix of hope and uncertainty swirling around them. Each stroke of the brush revealed more of River's potential beneath the grime, small patches of vibrant gray shining through like hidden treasures waiting to be unearthed. "Today is going to be different," Brian murmured, the warmth of determination flooding his voice. He could feel a shift within himself, a growing commitment to nurture River into something more than just a forgotten auction horse. This was their beginning, an opportunity for both of them to learn and heal together. Days turned into weeks as they established their training routine, marking time by the gradual transformation taking place before Brian's eyes. They moved slowly at first, short sessions filled with gentle grooming, followed by quiet moments spent bonding over feedings or walks around the barren fields that were once full of life. Brian noticed River responding more each day, his ears flickering with awareness when he heard Brian's footsteps approaching and his eyes sparkling with understanding, as if realizing there was someone who cared. There were moments when they'd simply stand together under the vast sky, letting silence speak volumes. A powerful connection formed between man and horse amidst an uncertain world. One bright afternoon, while brushing River down in the barn, Brian felt a surge of excitement bubbling up inside him. It was time to introduce some basic groundwork. "Let's see what you can do," he said cheerfully, while fastening a halter onto River's head for the first time since bringing him home. As they stepped outside into the sunlit yard, filled with sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls, River seemed slightly unsure, but curious all at once. He nudged against Brian's shoulder, searching for reassurance that everything would be okay. "Just follow my lead," Brian encouraged gently as he walked forward and invited River to take a step alongside him. It took only moments before that hesitant footfall transformed into something more confident. Then, another followed suit, until they began trotting side by side down the dusty path leading towards an open patch where tall grass had emerged defiantly from cracks in parched earth. "You're getting it," Brian cheered, encouragingly clapping his hands as they practiced turning back toward each other in small circles after several strides forward. Each repetition deepened their bond, a mutual trust beginning to blossom where none existed before Michael's enthusiasm lit up the atmosphere as he watched Brian and River practice their movements. The sun cast a warm glow across the dry landscape, but for Brian, hope swelled within him like a tide ready to sweep away despair. Just a few days ago, he had witnessed how River seemed to sense the water hidden deep within the earth, and now this newcomer's interest sparked something new in him. Perhaps it was optimism that things might change. Not everyone shared in this newfound spirit. Jack Whitfield sat on the sidelines with his arms crossed tightly over his chest, skepticism etched into every crease of his weathered face. The other ranchers nearby exchanged glances filled with doubt. Michael's questions only fanned those flames. "Do you really believe that horse can do what folks are saying?" Jack's voice cut through the air like a knife, harsh and unyielding. He stared at Brian as if he expected an answer that would make sense of this madness. With each passing moment spent training alongside River, Brian felt more confident in their partnership, but even now, uncertainty gnawed at him. "You've seen it yourself," he replied carefully, his gaze flickering toward River, who stood patiently by his side. "He found water for us, when I didn't think there was any left." The confidence in Brian's voice faltered slightly under Jack's unwavering scrutiny. "And I'm sure that makes all the difference when you're barely scraping by," Jack shot back dryly. The tension in the air grew thicker with every word exchanged. Ignoring Jack's jab, but feeling its weight nonetheless, Brian gestured for Michael to follow him as they continued trotting along beside River down a dusty patch where resilient blades of grass emerged defiantly from cracked soil. Each stride felt more synchronized than before, a budding connection blossoming between horse and rider grounded in trust. "You're doing great," Brian encouraged as they turned back toward each other in small circles. This simple exercise became increasingly fluid and natural with each repetition, while their bond deepened further still. But just as he began to revel in this sense of progress, disaster struck without warning. A sudden commotion erupted among the other horses tethered nearby. One startled animal broke free from its handler's grip and bolted directly toward them, Frantic hooves pounding against parched earth echoed through the otherwise quiet afternoon. "Look out!" someone shouted, as panic spread like wildfire among both horses and humans alike. In an instant, everything changed. The world narrowed down to desperate reactions fueled by instinct rather than thought. As chaos unfolded around them, River sensed trouble before anyone else did. His body tensed beneath Brian as he prepared to react. Something primal ignited within him, and then came thunderous hoofbeats racing straight towards them. Brian's heart raced while adrenaline surged through his veins. Fear wrapped around him like a vice as thoughts swirled rapidly through his mind. What if River panics? The world erupted into chaos, the air thick with panic as a horse broke loose from its handler, galloping wildly toward Brian and River. The ground trembled beneath the pounding hooves, and time seemed to freeze for a heartbeat as every instinct kicked in. "Look out!" someone yelled, their voice laced with urgency, but it felt like the warning hung heavy in the air. Brian's heart thundered in his chest, a mix of fear and adrenaline flooding through him. He barely had time to think. All that registered was the fierce energy surging around him, the frantic whinnies of nearby horses blending with shouts from humans caught off guard. Fear twisted in his gut. Would River bolt too? Would he lose control? But then he felt it, a shift beneath him as River's muscles tensed. The gray horse stood firm, not retreating, but bracing himself against the imminent storm of hoofbeats barreling their way. Brian could sense River's instincts sharpening. This wasn't just any moment. It was a test of trust between them. "Easy, boy," Brian urged softly, trying to anchor both himself and River amidst the unfolding crisis. "Stay with me." River's ears flicked back toward Brian's voice, as if acknowledging him, even while fixated on the approaching danger. The wild horse thundered closer, its mane whipping through the wind like a chaotic banner, and yet, instead of fleeing into panic, River remained steadfast beside Brian. As they faced each other down that path choked with dust and dread, Brian could see new resolve igniting in River's eyes. It was more than just instinct now. There was recognition of partnership building between them, the understanding that they were no longer separate entities, but united against whatever was rushing towards them. Then everything clicked into place. As if choreographed by fate itself, River shifted slightly. His body turned ever so gently towards where the danger approached while keeping his focus on Brian, waiting for guidance amidst uncertainty. "Let's move!" Brian shouted suddenly as fear transformed into action. He didn't want to give panic any room to bloom between them. They needed to work together now more than ever. With a commanding nudge forward, he pressed his leg gently against River's side while using light pressure on the reins, instinctively guiding him away from harm without breaking stride. Together, they stepped aside just as the runaway horse careened past, air whooshing violently around them as if it had merely been an apparition crossing their path before disappearing into open space beyond reach. The chaos began to subside almost instantly. Those around quickly regained composure despite racing hearts still echoing remnants of fright deep within their cores. Cheers erupted amongst ranchers witnessing what had transpired, gasps slowly shifting back toward laughter at how narrowly everyone had avoided disaster. A tense silence enveloped the auction barn as the dust began to settle from the frantic moments before. Brian's heart raced, echoing the adrenaline that surged through him after the chaos had unfolded. The sound of hooves still rang in his ears, but now there was a palpable relief in the air as ranchers and spectators realized just how narrowly they had escaped disaster. "Did you see that?" shouted one rancher, laughter mingling with disbelief in his voice. "That horse has got some instincts." "More than just instincts," Brian murmured under his breath, casting a sideways glance at River. The dappled gray gelding stood calm and steady, seemingly unfazed by the turmoil that had just erupted around them. Brian could feel an energy radiating from River, an assurance that this horse possessed something rare and valuable. As applause broke out among those who had witnessed the near disaster, Not everyone shared in the jubilation. In fact, sharp whispers echoed among some of the more seasoned ranchers who had always approached change with skepticism. "What good is it if he can't even control himself?" one man scoffed, leaning on a nearby railing while eyeing River with thinly veiled disdain. Brian felt a knot twist in his stomach at the comment, but pressed forward anyway. "He just saved us from a serious accident," he countered, trying to maintain his composure despite feeling defensive over River's reputation. "And what happens when he can't?" Another voice chimed in from behind him, this one deeper and laced with authority. Jack Whitfield stepped closer, his weathered face creased with doubt. "You're putting your faith into an animal no one else wanted." Those words stung like sharp thorns digging into soft skin. Brian faced Jack squarely, tension crackling between them like electricity igniting dry grass underfoot. "I believe he can do more than we think," he asserted firmly. Jack shook his head slowly as murmurs spread through other attendees like wildfire. "This isn't just about belief, it's about evidence." A chorus of agreement rippled through skeptics watching closely now, their eyes narrowed against dusty sunlight streaming through gaps in the barn structure. Brian took a deep breath to quell anger bubbling within him. He needed to keep calm if he was going to sway anyone toward believing River's potential rather than dismissing it outright. Turning back toward River, who remained poised despite all eyes fixed upon him, he spoke clearly so everyone could hear. "What if I can show you?" Laughter erupted again at first, as though mocking Brian's attempt to defend River's capabilities, but it quickly faded into uneasy silence when they realized he wasn't joking. "What do you mean?" someone finally dared to ask. "I'll have him find water here," Brian declared boldly, a glimmer of hope flickering amidst mounting skepticism surrounding them all, like dark clouds threatening rain but never delivering relief. With a quick flick of the reins, Brian led River toward the center of the gathering crowd, tension hanging in the air like an electrified cloud. The sun cast long shadows across the dusty ground as ranchers exchanged glances filled with skepticism and curiosity. River stood tall, his coat gleaming faintly in the late afternoon light, while Brian's heart raced with anticipation. This was his moment to prove that hope could rise from despair. "Watch closely," Brian called out, projecting confidence even as a knot tightened in his stomach. He gently nudged River forward, and they approached a section of parched land that had once thrived with lush grass, but was now barren and cracked. The murmurs around them faded into silence. All eyes were on him and the gray horse who had already transformed so many lives. Brian took a deep breath, steadying himself against the weight of expectation pressing down upon him. "River," he said softly, coaxing his companion with warmth and conviction. "Show us what you can do." The dappled gray gelding seemed to understand immediately, lifting his head as if responding to an unspoken command. His ears pricked forward attentively as he surveyed the dry expanse ahead of him. With deliberate steps, River began to walk along the periphery of the area, his movements graceful yet focused. As he reached one spot near a gnarled oak tree, River paused abruptly. His nostrils flared wide before he lowered himself closer to the ground. Then came a sudden flurry of activity, his hoof striking down rhythmically against the earth with purpose and intensity. "Paw! Listen! Paw! Listen!" The crowd drew nearer, their expressions shifting from doubt to intrigue at this strange ritual unfolding before them. Brian felt their collective breaths hitch as they watched River work tirelessly at that singular spot, the thick dust swirling around him, mixing with hopes that clung desperately to life. "What's going on?" someone whispered audibly amidst hushed tones. "Is he actually doing something?" Another voice chimed in skeptically. Brian felt adrenaline pulse through him as River continued pawing persistently at hard-packed dirt that had been neglected for too long, a mere illusion of solidity over potentially rich resources hidden below. Time seemed suspended. Every heartbeat echoed louder than before until it blended seamlessly into a background symphony of anticipation. Then it happened. Without warning, River stopped mid-strike and turned his head slightly towards Brian, eyes wide with intent, as if beckoning for recognition from those gathered around them. Taking a calculated risk fueled by instinct rather than logic alone, Brian grabbed a shovel propped against nearby fencing, its wooden handle worn smooth by years of labor, yet sturdy enough for what lay ahead. Let's see if we've got water waiting for us just beneath this surface. He plunged the shovel into earth next to where River indicated, initially meeting resistance, but soon breaking through layers stubbornly holding secrets within their depths. Brian sank the shovel into the ground, his muscles straining against the resistance of hardened earth. Each thrust of the tool sent vibrations through his arms and echoed in his chest, drowning out the whispers and skeptical murmurs from the small crowd gathered nearby. The air hung thick with tension as he worked, beads of sweat trickling down his brow beneath the hot afternoon sun. "Let's see what we've got waiting for us just beneath this surface," Brian said, determination igniting his voice as he glanced at River. The gray horse stood steady beside him, exuding an aura of calmness amidst the swirling doubt around them. River shifted slightly, then focused intently on Brian's every movement. There was a connection between them, a silent understanding that transcended words, fueling Brian's resolve even further. With each plunge of the shovel, dirt flew up in small clouds around him. He could feel eyes watching closely. Some were filled with skepticism, while others glimmered with a flicker of hope. The possibility of finding water had turned into a tangible force, rippling through everyone present. Their collective breath held tight like a fragile thread. After several minutes of digging and probing through stubborn layers, something shifted in Brian's gut. An instinctive awareness urging him to keep going, despite fatigue setting in. The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on him. If he failed to prove River's abilities now, all faith would crumble into dust. Then it happened. A soft thud met the edge of his shovel that sent a spark rushing through Brian's veins. He paused for a moment before carefully scooping away more dirt, heart racing wildly within his chest as dampness seeped into view. Moisture glistened like precious jewels trapped under layers upon layers of earth. "It's here!" His voice boomed over murmurs swelling from behind as excitement bubbled forth. The crowd stirred restlessly, faces transformed by disbelief mixed with yearning hope. They edged closer, eyes widening as water began pooling steadily at the bottom of their makeshift hole. Brian knelt beside it, staring at its clarity with awe, while River stepped forward tentatively. As if sensing triumph around them, River nickered softly, a sound both encouraging and grounding against rising tides of exhilaration flooding their shared space. "Look at that! We found it!" Brian exclaimed to those gathered nearby, who gawked wide-eyed at this unexpected miracle materializing from parched soil they thought barren forevermore. "What did I tell you?" A man finally spoke up from within the throng surrounding them, his voice tinged with incredulity laced with respect, directed towards both Brian and River alike. As cheers erupted sporadically among spectators driven by renewed fervor amidst their earlier doubts about what they had witnessed unfolding before them, a transformation taking root, the palpable atmosphere morphed once more. The tension hung thick in the air as Brian plunged the shovel deeper into the earth where River had been so determinedly pawing. A collective breath was held by those surrounding them, anticipation electrifying the atmosphere like a storm brewing on the horizon. The sound of metal scraping against soil echoed in the stillness, punctuating moments of hope and disbelief. And then it happened, a shift in the ground beneath him, softening under the relentless pressure of his efforts. River stepped back slightly, eyes wide and alert, as if to say, "Here it is." Encouraged by an instinct stronger than doubt, Brian pushed harder with each stroke, finally breaking through to reveal a glimmer of something miraculous. "Look at that! We found it!" he shouted, exhilaration bursting forth from deep within him. The reactions were immediate. Cheers erupted among those gathered, a wave of joy flooding over faces that had known only hardship for too long. Gasps of disbelief morphed into jubilant shouts as people moved closer to witness what they thought was impossible, a source of life emerging from parched ground. "What did I tell you?" A man's voice rang out through the crowd, tinged with awe and respect, directed toward both Brian and River alike. The scene transformed from mere spectatorship to shared celebration. Hands clapped together in unison while tears flowed freely down weathered cheeks. As more onlookers joined them around the small spring gushing forth clear water, emotions ran high, laughter blended seamlessly with cries of relief. Families embraced one another tightly as if grasping onto hope itself. Children danced around in circles filled with delight, their laughter ringing out pure and unrestrained, while elders stood rooted to their spots, eyes shimmering with disbelief. Brian looked at River standing proudly nearby, a quiet confidence radiating from him, as if he understood what this moment meant for everyone present. It wasn't just about finding water. It was about restoring faith amid despair, a tangible miracle birthed not just from soil, but also resilience woven into every fiber of this community. "You did this," Brian murmured softly to River, who turned his head slightly at hearing his name spoken amidst all this excitement, a knowing look passing between them that spoke volumes beyond words alone. With determination ignited anew inside him, like wildfire spreading across dry grasslands, left untouched for far too long now, Brian turned toward Jack Whitfield, who approached cautiously yet eagerly amongst their jubilant throng, gathering around their discovery. "You weren't kidding," Jack chuckled incredulously while wiping sweat off his brow, his rugged face lighting up with newfound hope, mirrored by everyone else's astonished expressions swirling all around them like autumn leaves catching wind. "The last time I dug here—" "Nothing," Jack continued, shaking his head in wonderment, still processing how quickly things could change when least expected, and how sometimes miracles come dressed in unexpected packaging. The air crackled with excitement, the scent of damp earth mingling with the warm afternoon sun as Brian stood amid a gathering crowd, all eyes fixated on the trickle of water emerging from the once barren ground. River stood by his side, head held high, sensing the energy rippling through the group. Brian felt a surge of pride swell within him. This was no longer just about survival. It had transformed into something much larger than himself. "Look at that! We found it!" he shouted, joy spilling over as those around him erupted into cheers and disbelief. Laughter mixed with shouts of amazement filled the air, reverberating off the hills surrounding them like music composed from pure hope. "What did I tell you?" came a voice from within the throng, a man whose skepticism had melted away in light of this miraculous discovery. His words resonated with respect, not just for Brian but also for River, the once-forgotten horse who had led them to this moment. As ecstatic chatter began to weave through the crowd like a vibrant tapestry, Brian caught sight of Jack Whitfield pushing through, sweat glistening on his brow and a grin splitting his weathered face. "You weren't kidding," Jack chuckled incredulously, shaking his head as if still trying to grasp how swiftly their fortunes had turned. "The last time I dug here, nothing." The awe in Jack's voice mirrored that of everyone else present. It was as if they were witnessing a scene straight out of an old tale where miracles took root in parched soil when least expected. Brian's heart raced at Jack's words. This was more than just water. It symbolized revival for their community. With each drop that pooled at their feet, Laughter rang out louder and spirits lifted higher. He caught River's eye then. A quiet understanding passed between them, an unspoken bond forged in shared adversity and triumph alike. This partnership was no longer merely man and horse. It had evolved into an alliance built on trust and mutual recognition. The horse, who had once been seen as broken, now stood tall as a beacon of possibility against their arid landscape. With renewed determination igniting within him like flames consuming dry grasslands after rain, Brian stepped forward towards Jack. "We have to spread this word," he urged fervently. "This can change everything." Jack nodded vigorously, arms crossed firmly across his chest, while his expression shimmered with newfound hope, reminiscent of dawn breaking after long nights spent under dark clouds. "Absolutely. We've got to let everyone know what we discovered here today." "Together," Brian added emphatically as he turned back toward River, standing stoically beside him, his gray coat shimmering like silver under the sunlight, now illuminating their surroundings so vibrantly that every shadow seemed impossible. With the sun hanging low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue across the valley, Brian and Jack stood side by side, breathless from their extraordinary discovery. The air crackled with excitement, mingling with a faint scent of earth disturbed after so long. River stood calmly beside them, his gray coat gleaming as if he were basking in the very essence of hope itself. "You weren't kidding," Jack chuckled incredulously, wiping sweat from his forehead as disbelief danced in his eyes. "The last time I dug here, nothing." His voice trailed off, still grappling with the miracle they had unearthed just moments before. The water bubbled steadily from its hidden source, whispering promises of life to the parched land around them. Brian felt a surge of determination swelling within him, a fire igniting where once there had been only despair. "We have to spread this word," he said fervently, looking at Jack with intensity that mirrored the urgency in his heart. "This can change everything." Jack nodded vigorously, arms crossing over his chest as a glimmer of newfound hope sparked in his expression. "Absolutely." Together they turned back toward River, who remained steadfast beside Brian. It was as if he understood the significance of this moment entirely. This horse that had come from so little now, standing tall as a beacon for their community's revival against adversity. As they moved away from the excavation site and began walking toward their trucks parked nearby, Brian glanced back at River and couldn't shake off the gratitude welling inside him. This dappled gray gelding had not only changed his own life, but could potentially save countless others like Dorothy Kimball and her granddaughter Angela, families whose futures hung precariously on dried-up wells. He felt an unshakable bond forming between himself and River. It transcended mere ownership. It was about shared destiny now. Back at the ranch later that evening, while resting under an expansive starlit sky strewn with diamonds over darkened horizons, Brian sat on his porch steps alongside River, who quietly munched on some hay freshly brought from the barn. The tranquility enveloped them like a warm blanket after a long day. "You know what I think?" he murmured softly into River's attentive ears. "You always had this gift deep inside you." A gentle breeze rustled through nearby trees, as if agreeing with him. It felt surreal how far they'd come since that fateful auction day when no one wanted this once-forgotten horse. "I thought I was saving you," Brian continued thoughtfully, gazing into River's intelligent eyes, shimmering under moonlight's soft glow, lingering above them, like an ethereal guardian watching over their journey ahead. "But really? You saved all of us,"